Geometry. 11.4. Circumference and arc length. By the end of this lesson, you should be able to find the circumference and arc length of a circular arc. What is the circumference of a circle? And when that comes to mind, you might think of the formula for the circumference of a circle. And the formula for that would be, if you're given your radius, 2 times pi times your radius, or sometimes you see it as pi times diameter, because 2 times your radius is your diameter. But when we're asked, what is circumference? What does that mean? Not just the formula or the number that you get when you calculate the circumference. The circumference of a circle is going to be that distance around your circle. So in some ways, you can think of it as the perimeter of a circle. We wouldn't call it the perimeter, though, because it has a special name, circumference. So then what's the difference between arc length and arc measure? You saw in the target that we're supposed to be able to learn how to calculate the arc length of an arc. And we've also talked about arc measure, but really what is the difference between the two of them? And that's what I'm going to try to explain here. So we know that every circle is 360 degrees. So it takes 360 degrees to travel from one point all the way around it. And we can have big circles and small circles, so meaning that it has a larger radius than the other. And when we're talking about the arc lengths, that's different than the arc measure. So let's just say that this is point A and point B, and we have point C and point D. The measure of arc AB is equal to the measure of arc CD, because they're both going to be 62 degrees. But the length talks about something different. The length is like asking, if you were to take a piece of string and I wanted to cover this arc with string and arc CD with string, those aren't going to require the same amounts of string. You would need more string to cover the arc CD than you would need to cover the arc AB. And that is what arc length has to deal with, the actual length of the arc, or the actual distance between them, not the measure. If you're needing to find the arc length, you will also need to know the arc measure, and it's all related to one another. So in a circle, the ratio of the length of a given arc to the circumference is equal to the ratio of the measure of the arc to 360. So we can say that this measure of arc AB is part of 360 degrees, and the arc length, meaning the actual distance, will be part of your circumference, which is 2 times pi times r. So if you were asked to solve for the arc length of AB, well, just like if you're asked to solve for this portion, you'd need to multiply both sides by 2 pi r, and we would end up with measure of AB over 360 degrees times 2 times pi times r. Now, we also had said that the circumference is the same thing as pi times diameter, so you could substitute that formula in place of it. Or if you are actually just given your circumference, you can use that measure wherever you see 2 pi r. Let's try a couple practice problems. So first, we need to make sure we understand how to find the circumference of a circle, and if you're given the circumference, how to find the radius of it. So circumference, we said, is found by pi times diameter, or 2 times pi times your radius. So in this case, since I'm given the diameter, I'm going to go ahead and use this first formula. So circumference is equal to pi times diameter, and when I substitute in the length, we have pi times 25. So if we wanted this in exact form, we can say that the circumference of this circle is 25 pi centimeters. If we wanted an approximate measure, something that we can take and get a better estimate in real context, this would end up being 70.54 centimeters, and those would be your answers. It's likely that you may have seen this in middle school, and this is review. If that's the case, great. If you're asked to find the radius and you're given the circumference, it's going to be in your best interest to use the formula that has to deal with the radius. So I know that circumference is equal to 2 times pi times r, And if I'm given that the circumference is 70 feet, you can substitute it in place of that measure and solve for r, which means both sides will be divided by 2 pi, and r will be equal to 70 divided by 2 pi, which in exact form would end up being 35 over pi, but more often we like our approximate measures, which would give us 11.1, and since it's feet, feet would be our units here. Now let's apply what we've learned to find the arc length of each arc, and in this case it's just arc AB. We know that our general formula to find the arc length is your arc length over your circumference, which is equal to your arc measure over 360 degrees. So we're going to need to substitute in the measures we know and solve for what we don't. Since our arc length is what we're trying to solve for, we'll leave that as x. We know 360 is constant. That's not going to change. Our arc measure is something we'll need to find. And noticing that this is a central angle, we know that the central angle is equal to its intercepted arc's measure. So we can say that the measure of arc AB will be 70 degrees. Our circumference we don't have, but we can find that. We'll have to do a little bit of side work, and we know that the circumference is equal to, well, we're given the radius, so we'll use 2 times pi times r, and so our circumference is 2 times pi times 4, which is equal to 8 pi. Use your exact measures until we get to the end. So we'll go ahead and substitute in 8 pi. From here, once you have your setup, you're cross multiplying and solving. So we can say 360x is equal to 560 pi. And this is where, to get your exact answer, we'll divide both sides by 360 and simplify. And x would be equal to whatever 560 divided by 360 in fraction form, which is 14/9, which just simplifies this portion, but we still have pi to multiply it with. If you wanted an approximate answer, then that's where we can go ahead and multiply our 14/9 by pi, which would give us about 4.89, and our units for this is millimeters. Either answer is appropriate based on the context of the question. So here it just says find the length of each arc. Doesn't really matter which one you choose. However, it's a multiple choice question, or if they're asking for an exact answer, we'll need to use what's most appropriate. All right, so instead of jokes, we're going to switch it up a little bit today, and we'll have a little bit of a fun fact, or disturbing, depending on how you take it. And the fact for today is, did you know that most lipsticks contain fish scales?